Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Equity Residences webinar today. I'm John Long, one of the managing directors of the fund, and with me here is Greg Sally.
Welcome, everyone.
Let's just do a quick sound check. We've got some questions coming in. Can everybody hear us right now? Great. So as far as just some logistics here, we've got everybody on mute for this webinar. Please feel free to type your questions into the question box, and we will respond to those if appropriate during the webinar. Otherwise, we'll have a Q&A at the end, and Greg and I will address all the questions that are coming in. Just to start, here's just something that says this is not a solicitation or an offer to buy or sell any securities. And with that, we'll get started. So, as most of you know, Equity Residences manages a portfolio of luxury real estate private equity funds. Today, Greg and I are going to talk about our business model and introduce the Equity Platinum Fund that combines luxury lifestyle with investment opportunity. What Equity Residence has done is implemented an innovative and proven investment model for luxury vacation properties. In a nutshell, what we do for investors is first off, we acquire a diversified portfolio of luxury vacation residences at exceptional values. We then offset the operating expenses of the residences of the fund using rental income that also provides an opportunity to participate in the fund with no annual operating fees. As a result, investors then enjoy rent-free use of hundreds of residences around the world. And that's through our portfolio of properties and our partnerships through exchange networks that we put into place for our investors. In addition to the rent-free usage of the properties, we also have an opportunity to earn annual cash dividends in sort of an innovative way that we've put together our fund, allowing the rental income not only to offset expenses, but to provide a dividend opportunity. At the end of the term of the fund, we're going to sell the properties for a capital gain and distribute all the proceeds to investors. So what does that result in? It allows you to basically have your money work for you while you vacation. This next chart outlines sort of the history of Equity Residences. Greg and I were the founders of the fund, and we launched this back in 2012. We launched our first equity villa fund and acquired our first two properties in Maui and Palm Springs. From that beginning, we've grown the fund to over 100 investors in the fund, over a dozen properties in the portfolio, and the portfolio is up over 40% property appreciation to date. Our Fund 1 investors have been so happy with their initial investment that many of our Platinum Fund investors, which is our Fund 2, actually came from our first fund, the Equity Villa Fund. What you'll see here in this timeline as well is that the Equity Platinum Fund, we launched it in 2015, announced a Hawaii property and a Lake Tahoe North Star residence, which investors have already been staying at this summer in Lake Tahoe and enjoying that property. So I talked about, over a dozen properties in the portfolio. This page shows you an example of what our portfolio is. You'll see that killer swimming pool ocean view shot. That's our Big Island, Hawaii property. It's one of the most fantastic places to sit out and barbecue and enjoy a sunset over the ocean in Hawaii. Below that is our Deer Valley property. We actually have two properties in Deer Valley that are adjacent to each other that total over 8,500 square feet and 10 bedrooms. The photo there is of our 6-bedroom, 5,500 square foot property that's walking distance from Old Town and both walking distance to the Park City lift and a short shuttle ride to the Deer Valley base. In addition, we've got luxury Florida properties, both the Longboat Key property, the Marathon Key Florida property, and the Captiva Island property all have private boat docks. So they're all sitting on the water We make it easily accessible for you to rent a boat and have it there at the property when you show up, to go out and fish or enjoy the ocean, snorkel, or just catch a sunset cruise with the family. Lower right, you'll see a Maui, Hawaii property we have. One of my favorite properties. It's actually one of our smaller properties in the portfolio, but one of our investor favorites. You can actually sit on that lanai and watch the whale watch during whale season. And then it's a short stroll down to the beach. Pretty fantastic spot. We'll talk about the Mauna Lani, Hawaii, and Lake Tahoe, our newest residences. Greg will go through that shortly. So I'm going to pass it off to Greg and let him talk a little bit about our equity experience.
You know, one of the things about our portfolio is it's very East Coast, West Coast balance. You notice we found that we have a lot of investors on both coasts, and we really want to be very accessible regardless of where you live in the country. And that's one of the things we look at as we're building out that portfolio. But before I talk more about our properties, I'll talk a little bit about the experience. A big part of why people invest with us is not just for the financial return, but for the luxury vacation experience of bringing friends and family to a home that's been maintained and taken care of and prepared for you and really welcomes you and makes you feel like it's your own home, which it is. That includes concierge services both before you arrive and while you're in residence. It can include stocking the groceries in the refrigerator for you so you have nothing to worry about. You'll have food available as soon as you arrive from the airport. Fresh flowers, wine, and a gift basket are always there waiting for you. And of course, we have quality linens, toiletries, soaps, and shampoos. And what I think is really fun is, depending on the property and the location, we'll have sports equipment that you can use. You'll see in the photo here an example of a couple of stand-up paddle boards. Several of our properties have these. Some properties you can literally just drop them off the dock in the back of the property and go off paddleboarding or kayaking. Many of our properties will have beach cruisers, so you can hop on the beach cruisers and ride around the neighborhoods. But it all depends on the local property and what makes sense for that particular location. We also have, entertainment systems with large flat screen TVs, streaming media, and our concierge can help arrange things like private chefs to come in and cook for you and your family. Speaking of our concierge services, this is one of the things that I really love. So we provide concierge services, as I said, pre-arrival and in residences. And this is an example of an experience from using the concierge. There was a couple that wanted to do a weekend birthday up in North Star Lake Tahoe Resort. And so they arranged for a whole curated weekend, which included a sunset champagne tour, dinner by a private chef, husband-wife massages, yoga, and basically the whole property was set up for them and decorated for them prior to arrival. And the whole attitude is, we want to make this an amazing experience, and how can we help you do that? You'll also see in the photos to the left, I'll talk more about our North Star property, but there's actually a private club that only owners, including our investors, have access to. And that private club has an Olympic-sized swimming pool, a hot tub, a gym, a lounge, a bar with complimentary drinks, including beer and wine, entertainment areas. It's old video games. It's just a really cool place. It's got a basketball court. So when you're up there with your family, not only do they have all the amenities of the properties to use, but they have the amenities of the resorts and specifically the private club that you can use, which is literally right next door. Talk a little bit about some of our properties. This is our Mauna Lani property on the Big Island of Hawaii. This property is in the Mauna Lani Resort, which means it has access to the resort amenities, which include golf. It's right on a golf course. It includes the restaurants, the shops, and one of the things I really like is it's right by the private beach club, where you can go there for a nice dinner, for a drink, or just to lounge on the beach. It's on this protected cove, so you can bring your kids there, go in and out of the water, and you don't have to worry about just the mass crowds being there because it is a private beach club. The house itself is in an amazing location. I mentioned it's on a golf course. It has views across to the ocean, private pool, 4 bedrooms, 4.5 baths. We'll be keeping a golf cart there to help get you around the resort. Walking distance to the beach club I mentioned, and it's just going to be an amazing property. Another example of a property is our North Star property in Lake Tahoe, and I mentioned this a little bit before. It's literally located right mid-mountain next to the Ritz. It's ski in, ski out. It has a ski room with, you know, boot warmers and ski racks, and you're just literally ready to go. And when you ski back, there's a hot tub right there. There's a fire pit, a gas fire pit you can sit around. It's got a home theater. It's got amazing views of the mountains, a large gourmet kitchen. It's also a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath property. Again, just an awesome property. We've already had some of our investors use the property. We've gotten great feedback, and would love for you to get to experience it yourself. We're also in the process of acquiring additional properties, and again, it's really keeping this East Coast, West Coast focus, and keeping that balance. So right now what we're looking at is a couple of options in Florida. One is up by the Rosemary Beach area, some know it as the A30 corridor. There's some interesting properties on some really beautiful white sand beaches, or near some really beautiful white sand beaches there. But also we're looking down in the Captiva area and parts of southern Florida. We're looking at Mexico, out on the Yucatan Peninsula near Playa del Carmen, Los Cabos on the west coast, but also the Caribbean, places like the Dominican Republic and the Bahamas. And over time we'll also be adding additional ski properties, places like Deer Valley, Utah, and Snowmass, Colorado. Another big benefit to investing with equity residences is our partnerships. We have a partnership with Elite Alliance, which is a network of high-end luxury resorts. Many of these resorts are in amazing places all over the country and around the world. They include places like Florence in Europe, places like Great Exuma in the Bahamas, or places like Cabo on the west coast, or Napa Valley, for example. In addition to just access to these resort properties all around the world, you also get the ability to use short notice usage of the properties through what's known as Elite Escapes. So when we get 30 or 45 days out from when a property is becoming available, if nobody has claimed it, then you can raise your hand, and for a nominal fee, you can go stay the whole week at this property for what's typically a fraction of what you would pay to rent a similar property for just one night. In addition to that, you also get access to Club Corp, which is this network of private clubs, both social clubs, golf clubs, around the country and around the world. That's just one of your benefits. I've personally stayed at some of these Elite Alliance properties, for example, in Esperanza down in Los Cabos, and I have to tell you, it's just a top-notch experience. We pulled up, there was someone there to carry our suitcases in. We went in. It was a 4-bedroom, 5-bath condo, if you will, with gourmet kitchen, large living room, had a private lanai with a private outdoor hot tub, private outdoor kitchen, but it had access to all the resort facilities as well. So we had the resort pools, the resort restaurants, the resort beaches, the resort concierge services, the resort gym, and it just made kind of for the best of both worlds. You have your own residence with all the amenities, but you have all the resort amenities as well. And I couldn't recommend it enough.
Yeah, and I'll echo that. If you look at this page, the property near the top, Great Exuma, I was able to go with my wife, and we took her sister for one of her special birthdays. Took 2 families to Great Exuma, absolutely fantastic resort on a pristine white sandy beach. Exceptional service, amazing place. Definitely a spot that we already want to go back to. And then down there in the lower left, Tuscany. We've actually had a lot of our investors go to Tuscany. It's one of their favorite Elite Alliance destinations. And in fact, my mother, who's an investor, also went to Tuscany recently, took her sister from Scotland, and they had a family trip with two families in Tuscany. She's raving about it and already trying to figure out where her next European Elite Alliance trip is going to be.
And Elite Alliance has a whole range of property sizes as well. They have 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom properties, so it's really adaptable to whatever your circumstances are if you're traveling with a bigger group or as a smaller group. And what's also cool about that is oftentimes you can take what would be effectively maybe only a week's usage of one of our properties, and you can potentially multiply that into 2 or 3 weeks usage in some of these Elite Alliance properties, depending on the size of the property and the time of year. So you can really multiply your usage through these networks. Another one of our partnerships is through Third Home. Third Home consists of a network of over 6,000 private residences, some estates, with an average value of around $2.4 million. And because of the size of their network, there's properties all around the world, from Europe to Asia to Central and South America, and of course across the US. These tend to be more standalone residences. They come in varying sizes as well. So even if you had a very large group, it's likely you could find a Third Home property that would hold a very large group, and if you were going to have a family gathering, you could all be under one roof. Another thing about this is they also have a short notice program that's available with their Chairman's Club, and through your investment with Equity Residences, we'll also get you access to that Chairman's Club. You'll be able to book short notice. You'll also have benefits in terms of not having your keys expire, and you'll get to try that out and just learn for yourself what it's like to experience this huge network of properties. Now, I'll give you an example. I actually used this short notice option through the Chairman's Club, and I stayed in Lake Tahoe Christmas week this past Christmas. So I just kept my eye on what was available, and I actually could have booked it probably 4 weeks out, but I booked it just 3 weeks out. I found an option in Tahoe available, a couple options. I found other options in Mexico, Sun Valley. There was actually a huge estate in Sun Valley available. But I chose Tahoe, and I stayed at a 3-bedroom, 4-bath property right on Lake Tahoe, and then it was very near the North Star Resorts, the Squaw Mountain, and so we were able to go around and just really enjoy all those ski resorts during the course of that week. And I got lucky as well. We had 4 blizzards while I was there, so we had a lot of fresh powder to enjoy.
So after that, we tried to give you a really good overview of Equity Residences, and now we want to just dive into the details on our current offering, the Equity Platinum Fund, explain that in detail to you, and then really be able to answer your questions at the end on that offering. So the Equity Platinum Fund, it really has 2 pillars, both luxury vacation benefits and a best-in-class investment. It's what we've tried to construct, and what we have created is the best of both worlds, in that we have made an exceptional real estate investment coupled with lifestyle benefits that have tremendous value. So from a luxury vacation benefit perspective, you have access to hundreds of luxury resort properties through Elite Alliance and Third Home that Greg just walked you through, which creates rent-free vacations for family and friends within our portfolios and other properties. We've also created the opportunity that there's no blackout date. So if you want to go to Christmas in Mauna, Lani, that's available to you. And not only through our properties, but as Greg alluded, it's a real example of him being able to go to a Third Home property over Christmas. And then another real added benefit from a luxury vacation perspective is personal concierge services, personal chefs set up in the homes if that's something you require, pre-arrival grocery shopping, luxury linens, access to sports and leisure equipment. And as we built this out, we're really making sure that everything is taken care of for you, your friends, and your family upon arrival. Then with respect to the best-in-class investment, what we've put into place is the ability for us to make exceptional real estate investors on behalf of our investors. So our properties that we are acquiring have significant upside potential. And even in today's real estate climate, our team, we are finding exceptional investments. And the last property that we just acquired in Lake Tahoe, Greg, you just want to talk a little bit about just briefly why that's such a great investment?
Well, there's a number of reasons. It's a unique property. There's 6 properties that are kind of mid-mountain right there, ski in, ski out with the amazing mountain views, 6 detached homes there. And we bought one of those 6 detached homes. We negotiated an upfront deal with the developer, which was priced about $700,000 below what the most recent of those properties sold for. So 3 of those properties have been sold now. On paper, the most recent one is $700,000 higher than what we paid. And then there's another one, the next one listed for sale is actually $1 million higher than what we paid. So assuming that one moves soon, we're potentially up $1 million with that comp, and then there's going to be 2 more to sell after that they'll continue to raise the price on. So we really got in with a good deal with the developer early. We also have some terms in terms of getting out where we're allowed to resell the property to other shared use type clubs, which there's oftentimes restrictions to that type of use. Here we don't have those restrictions. We negotiated to be able to use this, not just for ourselves, but for resale purposes, which then potentially makes our property of higher value when we go to resell it.
Thanks, Greg. The second point about what really makes us a best-in-class investment is that we are putting greater than 90% of capital into real estate. Another comparative fund of ours in the industry actually has a 20% syndication fee that they take off the top, as corporate overhead and sales and marketing expense and whatnot. But it's really hard to make up a 20% cut off the top with respect to a real estate investment. So we've worked really hard to minimize any overhead, syndication expense, launch expense, and put as much working capital toward real estate investment. The next 2 points are really what sets us apart as well. One, we have a no annual fee option, and any other residence fund in our category or destination club have significantly high annual fees. And through the fact that we have a rental component where we create income for our investors when the property's not being used, it allows us, one, to offset the annual operating fees for folks and have the lowest annual operating fee in the industry. But then it also allows us to actually allow our investors to return some of their usage and make the annual fee go to 0 if that's important to them. And then on top of that, if for whatever given reason in a given year you're not able to use any of your weeks of usage, then we've created a mechanism that allows you to return all of your guaranteed usage and opt for a dividend opportunity that'll come into play with respect to excess rental income and excess operating profits for the fund through having partners not use the properties and us being able to increase our rental income. And then lastly, what's important about our fund is that there is a fixed liquidation period and profit distribution. Our fund is a 10-year hold period, and at the end of the 10 years, we liquidate the assets and we distribute the profits to our investors. So I want to just walk through the kind of overview of the offerings here. What you'll see, what we have right now is a charter round of investment at $130,000 per unit. You can invest 1 unit, 2 unit, or 3 unit. We even have half-unit increments. If you would like to invest 1.5 units or 2.5 units, you can do that as well. And then with each level of investment, you get annual weeks of use. Now, we give credits for that investment, and with those credits, whether you stay in peak season or off-peak, or you stay in a $1.5 million 3-bedroom house in Maui, or you stay in a 6-bedroom $3.5 million house in the Caribbean, your weeks of usage will range from 1 to 3 weeks for 1 unit, 3 to 7 weeks for 2 units, and 4 to 10 weeks for 3 units. The annual vacation value of what those weeks are worth then range, from $12,500 to $17,000 for a unit, all the way up to $38,000 to $55,000 for a three-unit investment. Sorry. So as you can see, it's significant value. It's 9 to 13% dividend, not taking into effect the tax benefit of the vacations, just with your annual usage alone. So then what you can see here is an estimated 10-year vacation value. So for an example, 2-unit investment over that 10-year period, you've seen $250,000 to $350,000 of annual value. And then lastly, you have a potential return of capital. What we're showing here is a 1.6 return of capital. So it's assuming a 5% annual appreciation of the real estate. Now, every property is going to be different. Every market is going to be different. And frankly, the 5% is conservative given some of the early gains we're seeing from our properties and what we saw in the Villa Fund with respect to the smart acquisitions we're making and kind of the initial gains we can see even in the first year from some of the acquisitions we're making. But as you can see here, again, the 2-unit investment with a $260,000 investment, what we're potential return of capital upon liquidation is $427,500. So now I just want to walk through this 2-unit investment. So it's a one-time upfront of $260,000. So that's your initial real estate investment. Now that investment goes dollar for dollar. Everybody who invests owns that pro rata share of the real estate portfolio. So what's important to note is you're not putting your money just into Lake Tahoe, or you're not putting your money just into South Florida. Again, one of the values of our fund is that you're investing in a diversified portfolio. Sometimes I like to call it a fractional of a fractional, because you're an investor in a limited partnership that's going to own 25 luxury properties, both in the U.S. and abroad. So your money is working for you while you're vacationing, but it's also diversified. We're mitigating the risk, and we're ensuring that in some markets that'll see significant gains, others may not have as much. It's a really good use of your capital. And frankly, it's a unique investment in that there aren't any luxury real estate REITs out there where you can actually invest in this asset class in a blind pool, diversified way. So what do you get then for your $260,000 upfront real estate investment? As we mentioned before, it's 3 to 7 weeks of annual usage. Plus, I think it's important to note that there's unlimited space available. So it's just another benefit that if any of the properties are vacant last minute, our investors can book them and just pay the visit fee. So they're paying their share of the operating cost while they're in residence, which ranges anywhere from $500 to $800 for the entire week. That covers their variable operating expense. And we've had partners take advantage of that. And it's basically your 3 to 7 weeks, or then 3 to 7 plus as many kind of available weeks that are out there that you have the flexibility to use. And our partner networks have the same type of opportunity in that both Third Home and Elite Alliance have last-minute opportunities that don't require your credits. No annual fee option. So the annual fees can be offset through a reduction in vacation use. So we've kind of mentioned that. It's really what sets us apart in this market space, in that when we say you have 3 to 7 weeks of usage, well, you can return some of those credits and actually offset your annual fee so it goes to zero, and you would still have 1 to 2 to 3 weeks of usage, depending on which properties and what season you'd like to visit, to use with no annual fee. The fourth point there is that you receive the $24,000 to $35,000 vacation value annually, which again is a 9 to 13% annual return of investment. And then in the end, upon liquidation, your opportunity to receive, what we're estimating a 1.5 to 1.6 return of capital. So what you'll see there off to the right is just a summary of that. Look, it's $260,000 upfront investment, and then your total return with respect to your return of capital and the vacation value, it's north of $700,000 of value over the term of the fund.
So let's talk a little bit about how you extract that value. Well, first of all, the goal of the fund is to have up to 25 properties between $1.5 and $4 million in value. So because we have this range of value, the amount of credits you'll need to use a $4 million property on peak season will be more than the amount of credits you would need for a $1.5 million property in the off-peak season, and there's a whole continuum in between that range. Well, let's talk about some of these scenarios. So the first scenario is that you decided you want to go to our almost $3.5 million property in the Mauna Lani Resort in Hawaii over Christmas. Well, as a 2-unit investor, that's going to require 24 credits for you to use that property, which means you're going to use 24 of your 28 credits that you get each year. However, you would still have some credits remaining, 4 credits remaining that you could use to transfer over and get Elite Alliance credits. You could get Third Home Keys. We talked about those partnerships earlier. You would also have the opportunity to earn a rental dividend or an off-peak or shoulder week at another property. Now, you can still use this property with less than 24 credits. You can also use this property just on a peak season, so maybe it's a January or February week, and it would only be 12 credits. So don't think that this is going to necessarily have to use all your credits to stay in Mauna Lani. It's just that Christmas week is in such demand, it requires the maximum amount of credits. Now, actually, to rent that property, it would cost you about $3,500 per night. So you're getting a huge value, as John discussed, compared to the actual rental cost of the property. Another scenario would be you just take a peak season week sometime in January or February or March at the North Star Lake Tahoe Resort, and that would be 12 credits for you to stay for the week. That's a ski-in, ski-out property. We talked about that property a little bit earlier, but it's a beautiful property. And you would still then be able to go, say, spend spring break in Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic, and that would be 12 credits to stay there, as an example. And then you would also have credits remaining that you could use for one of these other purposes. In another scenario is maybe you go with one of the less expensive properties that we'll have in the portfolio. Maybe you're staying in the Kapalua Resort in Maui, or maybe you're staying in on the Florida Keys on the water with your private boat dock. And for that, you might be able to do a January beach vacation in Maui for 6 credits, peak season again, or spring break in Deer Valley for 6 credits, or summer vacation in the Florida Keys for 6 credits, or maybe you do a holiday like a Thanksgiving in Palm Springs, and that might be 9 credits. The point is, with this broad range of the portfolio between 1.5 and 4 million and the different seasons of the year, there's a ton of options to how you can get value. The more you invest, the more credits you get. So this was a 2-unit example. If you were a 3-unit investor, you'd get even more credits every year, and the credits actually scale up faster than your investment. So a 1-unit investor, they had 12 credits. As a 2-unit investor, you're already up to 28, and then that keeps ramping up as you increase your investment. John?
Thanks, Greg. That was a great summary. So that was hypothetical, and those are, illustrative examples of what you can do with those credits. I want to share with you now here kind of the year in the life of an equity residences investor. So this is Trina and Philip Ottinger. They're actually investors in both the Equity Villa Fund and the Equity Platinum Fund. And what you'll see here is, they invested 18 months ago, and these are the experiences that they've managed to put into place in just an 18-month time frame. Now, actually, both of them are partners. They're Silicon Valley, Palo Alto attorneys. Frankly, I'm not sure how they get this much time to get away and take these vacations, but they are living life to the fullest and taking advantage of this equity residences lifestyle. So if you kind of look at this page and kind of see where they've been, what you'll notice, it's not, they're not just taking advantage of the equity residences portfolio. So you'll see there, yes, they have gone to, this is the 6-bedroom Deer Valley property. They went and enjoyed that fantastic pool at our Big Island, Hawaii property. They've been to Palm Springs. They actually have been to Palm Springs twice, 2 trips to the Palm Springs house. But not only are they taking advantage of our properties, they're taking advantage of the Elite Alliance and Third Home Network and really broadening their vacation experiences. You'll see the Esperanza Resort there that Greg mentioned that he's been to. That's a fantastic Elite Alliance property. You'll see some brands that you have access to. Look, you have access to the Four Seasons Aviara in San Diego. the Ritz in St. Thomas. So Trina and Philip have taken advantage of being able to go to the Four Seasons and the Ritz and using their credits to do that. Tucker's Point, Bermuda, and Mayakama, Sonoma, two phenomenal golf resorts. They've been there. The Viceroy in Anguilla, phenomenal house. And Trina made a point to let me know that that house rents for around $5,000 a night. She took 8 friends with her. It's a $35,000 week that she was able to convert convert her credits in the fund and take advantage of that through Third Home. You'll also see she's been to our brand new Stellar North Star residence. She managed to take a few families there and do a summer-long weekend in North Star. But what you'll see here, all these experiences that they have managed to take advantage with their families. What they've also been able to do is that there were 3 trips that they actually gifted to families. So Captiva, Florida, Four Seasons, Costa Rica, and Longboat Key, Florida. All 3 of those trips they booked and gifted to family members, which you can do through our fund. You do not yourself have to actually use the properties. Not only can you send family members, you can also send clients or colleagues. So Trina and Philip managed to do that as well. They booked a Mammoth 80/50 ski trip, and they gifted that to a client. They sent a client to Mammoth. And let me tell you that the 80/50 resort in Mammoth is spectacular. It's one of the best ski resorts that has been built and executed. It's right at the base of the gondola. They thought of everything when they executed that resort. And there's plenty of availability there through Elite Alliance. But it doesn't just stop here for Trina and Philip. They've informed me that they've already planned some late 2016, early 2017 trips that include trips to Martha's Vineyard, Disney World, the Phillips Club in New York City, another trip to Esperanza in Mexico, and then they've already booked Martin Luther King weekend in Lake Tahoe at our Stellar residence. So as you'll see, the possibilities are endless. And the ability not only to leverage our properties and our partner network properties is pretty significant. And a lot of these trips were booked with the guaranteed usage that you get as an investor in the fund. And then some of these trips are booked through Elite Escapes, which are the Last Minute Elite Alliance, or the Chairman's Club Last Minute Third Home. So as you can see, those opportunities are available. And it really creates quite a great broad portfolio of vacation experiences. So rather than just hear it from me, I also wanted to let you hear a little directly from Trina and Philip about how they found equity residences and why they invested. Okay, I just stopped that. It sounded like you weren't hearing the audio from the testimonial, so sorry about that. We will continue. Their testimonial is up on our website, so I encourage you to log on to our website, and it's under Investors and Testimonials, and you'll be able to click and hear directly from Trina as to why they invested.
So let's talk a little bit about what this means for investors. So we have a one-time upfront investment starting at $130,000 for the Equity Platinum Fund. And that's actually discounted from our standard pricing of $157,500. So by coming in this investment round, you get in at $130,000. As we close out this investment round and go into future investment rounds, that price will gradually go up until we get up to the standard pricing of the $157,500. That's for one unit. One unit gives you 12 credits a year. for each year that you're investor in the fund. And then, as I mentioned previously, if you increase that investment to 1.5 units, you can do it in half-unit increments. Every half unit of investment you add, you get 8 incremental credits. So you'll end up with going from 12 to 20. And then if you go to 2 units, it's to 28. 2.5 units, 36. And then 3 units, 44. So as you get more and more credits, that gives you more and more currency to go stay at our properties, to go exchange with Elite Alliance and Third Home. However, you can always also do that short notice trips through space available at our properties, or short notice with Elite Alliance and Third Home without using any of your credits. So there's just so many ways to extract value out of the fund. You get a preferred return in the form of vacation usage at these residences around the world. So preferred return meaning there's no, before we make any money, you're already getting a return on your investment in the form of this free usage. You have the option to have no annual fee. As we said, you just return a portion of your credits to offset the annual fee. You'll still have remaining credits that you can go and enjoy properties and take a trip with. You have the opportunity to earn annual cash dividends. This is based on excess rental income each year. And you have long-term capital appreciation from holding what we believe is a low-risk asset with expected upside potential of at least 1.5, 1.6x. And the reason we feel like this is a low-risk investment is we don't highly leverage these properties. We do take out some initial leverage early on to help us ramp up property acquisition, but we have limits on that amount of leverage we can take. During the investment period, it's 50%, and during the utilization period, it drops to 25% or $5 million, whichever one is less. And so because there's low debt, and we actually intend to run the fund with no debt during the utilization period, even in a really bad economy, we're not forced to sell or liquidate the properties. The people who typically got wiped out in the last downturn were the folks that were highly levered and were in positions where they were forced to sell when it wasn't in their best interest to sell. We could weather a storm. We could continue to rent the properties. Our rental revenue may go down a little bit, but the way we're set up, that's something we could weather. Also, this is a diversified investment. So, you always hear real estate's local. So if you're in the wrong local market and something either really bad or really good happens in that market, it could have a big impact on your portfolio. But if you're diversified across a number of markets, it gives you diversification financially, but also diversification in terms of the types of vacation experiences you can have. If you owned a property yourself as your own personal vacation home, you would a lot of people feel obligated to go there when they really want to have more choices and more options. They have to maintain that property themselves, etc. By investing in this diversified portfolio, you have so many options of how to enjoy your vacations without all the headaches of having to worry about maintaining the property. Now, if you'd like more information about the fund, we have a private placement memorandum available, and this really goes into a lot of the details about the fund, so you can really understand all the benefits to being an investor. At this point, we'd like to open it up for Q&A, and to ask a question, simply go to the little panel on the side, type in your question, and we'll try to answer as many as we can in the next 10 minutes or so.
All right, so we've got the first question in, and it's a good one. It's one we get asked a lot. It's, can I get the weeks I want? The answer is absolutely. We've structured our investment and reservation process to not only make it equitable so that everybody gets a shot at getting the peak holidays, but also so that really everyone does end up getting the weeks they want. We have a low partner to property ratio of 7-to-1. We also, given the fact that we have investors that have access to the properties and renters that have access, we really give our investors priority access, ahead of time, so they're able to book the vacations they want a year or two out. And given that, our model, the investors, they basically have the allotment of about 40% of the available weeks. And that given that some investors actually want to trade out and use Elite Alliance or Third Home, or just opt to wait and just kind of play it out and use their credits later, or even opt for a dividend if they're not planning to use it. What we've seen historically through our first fund is that only 15 to 20% of the total calendar is actually used by investors through that reservation process. So there's not a lot of competition for the weeks that folks want. And frankly, given that what we just went through a reservation system for our other fund, we also go through the process of, if two families want a Hawaiian property for the same spring break, fortunately we have 3 or 4 Hawaiian properties in our portfolio. So if you don't absolutely get Maui for your spring break, Kauai or Big Island might be available for that spring break too, and we make that accommodation.
So we had a follow-up question to that of how does the renting of the properties actually affect the availability? And it's actually a positive compared to other funds and other options. As John mentioned, a relatively low proportion of our occupancy actually gets used by our investors, and that means you're not competing very much with other investors for access. Now, as an investor, you actually get priority access to the properties ahead of the renters. What that allows you to do is select what's best for you. So say it's really important to you that you want Christmas with your family to use one of these vacation options. You can elect that before we go out and rent that property. And so then the renters then will come in and fill in those gaps afterwards.
So we've had another question here they're asking about the 10-year period, and asking whether it's a 10-year cycle per property or total. It is a total. So the way the fund works is we have a 3 to 4 year investment period, at which point we will be buying the real estate. And it is the sooner of our $50 million fund for the 4 years. So at the end of the 4 years, fund, and that's when the 10-year utilization period begins. That 10 years is the hold period, at which point then we liquidate the properties and return the proceeds. Now, the 10 years, we gave ourselves 10 years to make sure that we can capture the next real cycle. We have the flexibility to maximize the return of investment for our investors. So if in 7 or 8 years we're in a peak and we can liquidate and return significant capital gains to our partners, we will do that. And so the general partner is incentivized, A, to make sure that the limited partnership maximizes its gains, so we have the flexibility then to sell early if it's in the financial interest of everyone. Conversely, on the back end, if in 10 years it's a macroeconomic crisis where it's a very poor time to sell real estate, we then have the flexibility, an additional 4-6 month periods on the back end, at which point after that, the general partner has no more discretion, and that's hence the fixed liquidation term, and it would require a majority vote of limited partners. So hopefully that explains that.
We also got a question about comparing and contrasting ourselves to similar clubs. We think we're really unique in that we pioneered a unique space where you get the best of both worlds in terms of being a good financial investment, but also being a good luxury lifestyle usage play. As I think about us compared to the competition, a lot of the competition doesn't give you the rent-free vacations that you can get with us. One that comes to mind is an Inspirato, for example, where you pay membership fees, you pay annual fees, and you still have to pay rent to go use the properties. And those properties are leased, and as the markets improve, those lease rates go up, and then they just raise the rates even more. Another thing that differentiates us is the opportunity for no annual fees. Virtually anybody out there requires you to pay an annual fee, and those annual fees can be very hefty. They can start at $8,000 and go upwards from there significantly. Another thing that differentiates us is the ability to have a dividend opportunity. So we actually enable you to earn a dividend based on excess rental income because this is a multifaceted investment. Also, another huge differentiator versus other equity clubs is the upfront fee, or what they often call a syndication fee. So there's some folks out there that try to emulate us, but they don't really emulate us. And one of the reasons is not just the annual fee that they charge compared to us, but also the fact that they're taking, in some cases, 20% or more of your initial investment. So the day you write a check, 20% they're just taking off the top. Your investment's gone down by 20%. And then they'll tell you in the fine print that they hope that the property appreciates enough to recover that 20% they took off the top. We have a small 6% syndication fee, but as you can see, the properties we've acquired have already appreciated in value more than that syndication fee. So the day you join, right now today, you would actually be ahead. And then another thing that's different than a lot of other options is we have a defined exit with your investment gains. So rather than holding these properties in perpetuity, we're planning, as John mentioned, to exit after a 10-year hold period and up to a 4-year investment period.
Thanks, Greg. Another question was, what's the breakdown of how rental income is allocated? So 100% of the rental income goes to the property P&L. So we've formed an in-house property management company that manages the properties. They do not, the property management company does not share in the rental income. So it's one of these things that if you own your own property and you hire a property management company, typically at a minimum they're going to take 20% of the revenue, up to 50% of the revenue in the coveted resort areas. We've negotiated with an entity that we set up to manage the properties on behalf of our funds, to where it's just a fixed rate for managing the properties. None of the rental income is shared with the property manager or with the general partner, and all that rental income goes to offset expenses. Then after 100% of the expenses are offset, that's where the rental dividend kicks in. And what happens is that partners that have contributed credits for a dividend will get a pro rata share based on how many credits they contributed for that dividend. It's up to a maximum amount, and then after that amount, all LPs share in any excess rental income after that.
So we have more questions coming in, but we're running out of time. So what I'm going to suggest is additional questions, please follow up with John or myself directly, and we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for participating.